This is in their 20s. I've been speaking to the most influential people about their 20s, people like Steve Wozniak, Jason Calacanis, Ev Williams, Sachs, as I mentioned,
I love it.
Ruben, a lot of great people because, there are so many 20 somethings right now that are
I think that's a
struggling.
great
And
idea.
thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to chat with some very nice people too. So we can go ahead and get started. With all my interviews, I love to start at the beginning. So I understand that your father was mayor of Miami and the first Cuban-born Miami mayor. What's one piece of advice that your father gave you in your 20s that you still think about today?
So what advice did he give me in my 20s? I think the best advice my dad ever gave me, and I call it adult advice. I don't know exactly what age I was. Let's call it early 20s, maybe even early teens, like sort of in that time frame. Was, you have a choice when you wake up in the morning, right? You have a choice how you see the water in the cup, right? Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Right? You literally have a choice. We see people that are positive and we're like, oh, that's the way they grew up. That's their personality, in quotes, right? And the truth is, it's not, I mean, that could be true, right? That's not necessarily a false statement, but it's an underappreciation of what it takes to be that positive person. Because I think what my dad taught me, and he taught me it in a very sort of visceral way, was that you have a choice. Like, it is a legitimate choice. It is a volitional choice. It's not something you're either born with or not born with. And I can tell you, because my mom, who has a lot of great qualities, one of her not so great qualities is that she has a tendency to be a little negative, right? It's just who she is, right? And yet we absorb qualities from our parents, right?
Of course.
But one of the things that I noticed with my dad is every time I would come up to my dad and tell him, hey, Dad, I feel terrible. He's like, well, why do you feel terrible? He's like, well, because I don't have this, and this is terrible, and that's going wrong, and this, that, and the other. And he'd say, yeah, but wait a second, but do you realize that you have this, and that you're doing this, and that you've accomplished this? And I was like, I never really thought about that. It's like I keep thinking about the things I don't have or haven't done, instead of focusing on the things that I do have and have done. And just that little change. And like I said, it's volitional, it's intentional, and it's doable by anybody. I'm convinced it's by anybody. Because again, I was naturally the other way. And I changed, right? And so I think that, and being around my cousin, who's a very, very positive guy, so being around two people that were very, very positive in terms of their disposition, their outlook, was a huge thing for me. Because when you're running a city, when you're running a business, when you're creating, when you're risking, when you're innovating, there's a ton of people that are going to tell you that you can't do it, that that you're crazy, that they're going to just bring you down, they're going to hate on you, right? And you need the mental ability to overcome that, right? And it's a skill, right? Like we look at athletes and we think about their physical prowesses, right? Like their ability to run, their ability to jump, their ability to catch, their ability to throw, or shoot, or whatever. But what I think we undervalue in athletes is their psychological and mental framework, right? Like, what makes LeBron James LeBron James? Yeah, he's got a great body, right? He's prototypical in terms of his size, his jumping ability, and all that stuff. But there are guys that are taller than him. There are probably guys that jump higher than him. There are guys that can shoot better than him, right? So he puts together the best of all these combinations, but then his mental outlook, his preparation, his intensity, his all that stuff comes together. You put the package together and you have something that we've never seen before. Same with Michael Jordan, right? So I think for me, the mental part is a part that in school they don't teach you. That you don't go to a class and they don't tell you, hey, it's positivity 101, right? Like, you don't get that in high school, you don't get that in college. It's not like freshman positivity 101. And they really should have that. They should have a class in college about how to be positive, why to be positive, and what are the benefits of being positive.
Totally. There are so many amazing lessons there. I just want to break down a few. You're saying focus on what you can control. Don't fear failure. And at the end of the day, both of those are rooted in just mental toughness and really knowing that, you can do anything. If you put your mind to it, if you really surround yourself by the right people, anything is possible. But a lot of times, as we grow up, we're told we can't do this, this is a risky move. We cannot do that. But at the end of the day, it's all mental toughness. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful lesson.
Yeah, and realize that in life, there are a lot of things you can't control, right? Like you focus on things you can't control. There's a lot of things you can't control. And there's no benefit in getting down about something that doesn't go your way that you didn't control. There's nothing you can do about it. So, yeah, and I would say, look, looking back, right, hindsight, it's good to learn, but it's not good to brood on. Like there is no like getting depressed about how something happened, something that occurred already that you really can't change. It's marginally beneficial at best to brood over it, right? You can learn from it. I'm not saying ignore it like it didn't exist, like pretend like it didn't happen, because it's reality and it happened and you got to learn from it. But getting upset about it, disappointed about it, depressed about it, what does it do for you? It does nothing. There's no ROI on that.
My next question, because Mayor, you obviously have done so much for the city of Miami, but it's gotten to the point where, there are so many other mayors and other cities that are looking at the amazing things that you've done, changing their cities, wanting to do better because you're really leading by example. But this all started somewhere. So I'm curious, what is that one moment or event of public service that you did while you were in your 20s that made you realize that you wanted to do this more long-term?
Wow. I would say, so I have to be in my 20s. So I would say I was probably 29.
That works.
I first ran for office when I started running when I was 30. Like, so that was, okay. So when I ran and won my first office, I was 32. So it was a 2-year endeavor. But the truth is that in my 20s, this is another thing I want to, when you sort of set the stage of what we're going to talk about, I really wanted to convey this. I didn't know anything about what I was going to do in my life in my 20s. I knew nothing. And I was the classic underachiever. If you looked at my resume in my 20s, you'd be like, there's no way this guy's going to be the mayor of anything. He's not going to be the mayor of, he's not going to be a dog catcher. You know what I mean? Like there's this guy, he's going to be average at best forever. Right. And I think one thing that I want to convey is you're not defined by your 20s, right? Whatever it is you did in your 20s or didn't do in your 20s, didn't accomplish. It's great that if you went to if you had perfect grades in high school, if you went to an Ivy League school in college, those are all great things. They're not bad things. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but if you don't do those things, I don't want you to think that your life is predetermined to be average or a failure or not spectacular. I think everybody has a different journey to success. And it's a product of a lot of things that are hard to define and hard to put your finger on. But I would say the biggest lesson is that in terms of public service, I wasn't one of these guys that grew up saying I want to be in politics at all, right? And like I said, I sort of give you a little insight into being a little bit of a late bloomer. And I ended up getting married. I ended up buying a house. I was, fairly young. But young for my generation, but sort of the age of marriage is kind of creeping up from one generation to the next because, my parents got married my dad got married at 27. I think my mom was 22 or something, you know what I mean? And I was 29, my wife was 27. So, the generation, because of education, a variety of other things, is sort of got married a little later in life. And I just became a part of my community. And I realized that, in life, you have two options. This goes back to sort of the positivity thing, right? You can complain about stuff, or you can be part of the solution. It's that simple. You could be part, or you could shut up. That's another option, right? It's just not to say anything. And my personality at that moment was, if I see things that are not where I think they should be, then I have a duty to do something about it. That's the A part. The B part is, I was born and raised in this city, right? My parents were exiled from their country of birth in Cuba. So this city has given me everything. It's given me everything that I have. And I feel a debt of gratitude and a sense of gratefulness for what this, and I feel the same way about my country, by the way. I think we owe, there's just, and I don't mean it in a tax sense. We owe in the sense of the opportunities that we've gotten from this collective democratic capitalistic experience that we have in this country. That's not perfect, but it's pretty damn good. We owe something back. And I don't know what it is. It's not a tax bill. It's not like, I owe my taxes. We owe something to the freedom that we enjoy. This is not a virtual background behind me. This is a legit background, right? We owe something to the freedom that we get. And so this was one of my ways of repaying the city that gave me so much opportunity.
That is so powerful. First off, I loved your point on not being defined by your 20s. I know a lot of my peers, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people because it's so easy to see what people are doing on our phones. I mean, Instagram, Twitter, this person just won this person's doing this, but really everybody has their own journey. Everybody has to stick within their own lane and focus on what they really love to do. So I love your point on not being defined in your 20s. For the next line of questions, because we spoke about your 20s, I kind of want to pivot and talk about your advice for people who are currently in their 20s. Let's start about something super cool that you did in December. You invited members of the 5,000 Role Models mentoring program to City Hall. These were all young men from Miami, and each of them were given $1,000 in Bitcoin from your office. Why is it important for 20 somethings to learn about crypto, and why are you so bullish on it?
Well, so many reasons. Look, I think crypto is the future, right? And in the history of our society, there have been moments where a particular technology redefines something, right? The people that don't understand crypto, I don't think that they understand how powerful a computer program that is not human, where there isn't human intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
To control a system as large as our currency system. They don't understand why that's powerful, right? And I think the reason why it's powerful is because we've been so disappointed by human nature for such a long time, right? By the way, that program is controlled by it's created by human beings. So it's not like there's no human interaction. It's just what's beautiful about it is that you, as a human being, whoever created it was very thoughtful about creating a system that had the right rules that would create the right incentive structure to create prosperity, right, in a fair way. And we see the lack of fairness and prosperity in different parts of the world. And oftentimes it comes down to human beings, right, that want more for themselves than what they're willing to work for, or what they're willing, or that is fair in the sense of like they're taking it as opposed to earning it, right? Or they're leaders that are inflating currencies or being corrupt, et cetera. So I think that's where this confidence comes from for the system. Like people often tell me, well, what's the value? Well, the value is very established, right? It's a very liquid asset. You could buy it and sell it. Right now, it's probably worth 43, 42, 44,000, something like that, right? Depending on the day, because it's an active market all the time. Mm-hmm. So, we as a society have valued it 44,000 times more than the US dollar. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So whether it's 50,000 or 60,000 or 70,000 or 40,000, people oftentimes will obsess over that volatility. And I'm like, well, wait a second. We have valued it 40,000 times more than our dollar, than our system.
That's a great point.
That's point A. Point B is I believe that it has the ability to do some transformational things, like potentially eradicate communism. Why do I say that? Because communism as an ideology is predicated on government control, right? We have to control everything, right? When you don't control the currency, which is one of the most important things that a government can control, which is the economics of a country, it's very difficult to maintain a system like that. And it's also a democratizing thing, right? In the sense that, as more blockchain applications are created, we're gonna have the ability, if you're an everyday person, to spend $100 on a piece of debt from a building, or $100 on a piece of equity from a building. The fractionalized ownership and fractionalized transfer of assets is something that can, create wealth for everyone. And so as we create this new Miami, which I call the epicenter of capital, because we're right in the middle of 5 major markets: New York, Silicon Valley, South America, Europe, and the Middle East. I want every kid in my city to be successful. Every single person born and raised in my city, I want them to be successful. And so to do that, we've got to give them the tools to understand where the world is going before it gets there, so that they can get ahead and be standing there waiting, right? As opposed to be behind, as oftentimes is the case, particularly in urban areas, and always be behind the kids that have more technology or more updated educational opportunities or a better network, et cetera. So that was the genesis of it. It was so inspiring for me that I decided to pledge my Miami coin winnings to that endeavor. And I also decided to pledge some Bitcoin. And then what happened was everybody got so excited about it that we got a bunch of people donating money. So we went from like, I think a $200 initial thing to $1,000 for each young person that was there. And you could just see the excitement and the joy in their face. And it's fulfilling. It's why I do what I do.
Of course, the world is changing very fast. It's a very exciting time, but whenever things do become exciting, a lot of people get left behind. So I just really, really find it fascinating that you and your city, you guys are really wanting to make sure that people do not get left behind, making sure that people are educated about crypto, educated about Bitcoin. I think that's very, very powerful. And I hope other cities, Chicago included, where I'm calling you from, lead by example too. So speaking more about the city, Miami winning the Healthiest City Award 3 years in a row is amazing. Congratulations, Mayor. Why should more young people my age, I'm turning 24 on Saturday, why should more young people consider moving to Miami?
Okay, so I'm going to give you an objective set of criteria. This is not the mayor as Homer, right? This is not the mayor as chief marketer, right? Like, obviously I'm a Homer. I was born and raised here. I'm the first mayor of Miami in 125 years, born in the city. So clearly I'm going to make its best case. And this is not me as a marketer, right? These are objective, verifiable stats. We're number one in the nation in tech job growth. We're number one in the nation in tech job migration. We're number one in the nation in pandemic recovery. We were the healthiest city and the happiest city, right? Two separate studies. We have grown in 1 year 200% in venture capital deals to $3.5 billion, according to PitchBook. If we were to grow for 2 more years at the rate that we grew this year, we could theoretically surpass San Francisco in 2 years. Wow. Okay, which is incredible, unheard of. We've moved $1.2 trillion in assets under managed companies to Miami in 16 months. Okay, our unemployment rate is 3.7%, which is almost 1% less than the state of Florida and significantly below the national average. So we're creating a city that is positioned not just for today, but for tomorrow. And if you're 24, you're not just thinking about today, you're thinking about tomorrow. Where am I going? Where can I move to have the best opportunities to start a family, maybe, to build an incredible company that revolutionizes the world? It's going to be Miami. It is inevitable at this point, right? And so it's not something that I think is going to happen. It's something that I confidently know is going to happen. And I think what happens is, unfortunately for the rest of the cities, is there's a phenomenon which I've created, or I've come up with a name, which is called the FlyMo effect. Right? So the FlyMo effect is the flywheel effect and fear of missing out, FOMO, combined. So when people start coming, there's this, it becomes like exponential, right? It like grows upon itself, right? Because then whenever somebody wants to do a deal, they're like, well, wait a second, I got to fly to Miami. They're like, well, why don't I just move to Miami? Look at the weather, look at the tax environment, look at the ecosystem. I mean, why wouldn't I live there?
I will be completely transparent. I am considering it. Mayor, thank you so much for this opportunity. Really appreciate you. Enjoy your week and your weekend. I'll see you.
Too. God bless.
Bye-bye.